Alright, this video will go over linear equations. Linear equations are pretty much the things you've been dealing with since 6th grade. And I imagine for most of you, you should grasp it fairly easily. But we're going to quickly go over it anyway. First thing we're going to go over is what's called the addition property of equality. It says that for all real numbers a, b, and c, a equals b if and only if a plus c equals b plus c. Pretty much a and b are equal if you add this, are still equal if you add the same number to both sides. And just so you note for shorthand, see this phrase if and only if, you may sometimes see abbreviated as IFF. If you ever see me write IFF, that's shorthand for if and only if. The next property we're going to go over is what's called the multiplication property of equality. This says that for all real numbers a, b, and c, where c is not equal to 0, that's supposed to be a 0 on the end, then a equals b if and only if a times c equals b times c. Alright, here's an easy example. Solve 2x minus 1 equals 13. Alright, if you add 1 to both sides, you get 2x is equal to 14. Now, what you can do from here is either divide by 2 or multiply by 1/2. Employ the multiplication property. 1/2 and 2 cancel out, so you're left with x equals 1/2 times 14, which is 7. Now, here's another easy example. Solve 4 times y minus 1 plus 5 times y plus 2 equals 3 times y minus 8. So 4 times y minus 1 would be 4y minus 4. Then you have your plus right there. 5 times y and 5 times 2, which would be 5y plus 10, equals 3 times y, which is 3y, and then 3 times minus 8 would be minus 24. Now, if we combine like terms, 4y plus 5y equals 9y, minus 4 plus 10 would be plus 6 equals 3y minus 24. Now if you combine like terms, subtract 3y and also subtract 6 from both sides, you get 9y minus 3y, which is 6y, plus 6 and minus 6 cancel out, so you have equals, the 3y minus 3y cancel out, and 24 minus 6 is 18. Now, you can divide by 6 or multiply by 1/6, and you get that y is equal to 3. Alright, here's an example from a word problem. If we subtract 27 from 3 times a number, the result is 18. Find the number. Alright, we need to just kind of break this word problem down and figure out what it's telling us. It says if we subtract 27, that means there's going to be a minus 27 somewhere in our problem. Then we need to figure out what are we subtracting it from. It says we're subtracting it from 3 times some number. So it'd be 3 times some number. We can call it x. And it says the result is 18. Meaning you get 18 whenever you're done. Oh look, we have an equation we can solve. Alright. If you add 27 to both sides, I'm just going to shorthand this because I know it's pretty basic. You get 3x is equal to 45. And if you multiply both sides by 1/3 or divide by 3, you get that number is 15. Alright, here's another example. The sum of 3 consecutive integers is 13 greater than twice the smallest of the 3 integers. Find all 3 of the integers. Now, what we need to do is figure out how to denote 3 consecutive integers using variables. I'd say pick some number. You could use n for number. So if they're consecutive, the next one after that would be n plus 1 because you just add 1 to it. Then you'd have to add 1 to that, so it would be n plus 2 would be the third integer. So it says the sum of these 3 integers, so n plus 1 plus n plus 2 is, the fact you see is, that would mean an equal sign. 13 greater than, if it's greater, that means you're adding 13, then twice the smallest of the 3 integers. The smallest one would be n, so it would be 2n plus 13. So now we can solve this equation. So that tells us our integers are 10, 11, and 12. Alright, here's another one you can do. Solve 1/2 x plus 2/3 equals 3/4. Because I know how much all students love fractions. Now what you could do is just get everything into a common denominator. The lowest common multiple of 2, 3, and 4 is 12, so you just multiply everything by 12. 12 times 1/2 would be 6, so it would be 6x. 12 times 2/3. You can multiply 12 times 2, which is 24. Divided by 3 is 8. Then 3/4 times 12. 12 and 4 reduced to 3, so 3 times 3 is 9. So now you have 6x plus 8 equals 9. And now you can solve. 6x is equal to 1. So x is equal to 1/6. Alright, solve x over 2 plus x over 3 is equal to 10. Now, before I start on this, one thing I do want to point out in case you don't quite see it, or in case you just kind of have forgotten. Since we have x over 2, since you have an x on top, that's like multiplying it by 1. So that you could, if it'd help you see it, you could rewrite it as 1/2 x plus 1/3 x is equal to 10. And now, you can find a common denominator, the 2 and 3. That'd be 6. So multiply everything by 6. Remember, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Now, the reason I put in parentheses is because that's another way of just showing that you're multiplying both of those by 6. You could just multiply these directly and not write the parentheses like what we did on the previous example. It really doesn't matter. But you have 6 times 1/2, which is 3x. Then 6 times 1/3, which is 2x. Then equals 10 times 6, which is 60. And that tells you that 5x is equal to 60. And x is equal to 12. Alright, solve this equation. Alright, what you need to do, again, is get it into a common denominator. If you were to multiply it, or multiply everything by the least common multiple, which would be 15. 5 and 15 reduced to 3, so you have 3 times 3t minus 1 minus 3 and 15 reduced to 5, so minus 5 times t minus 4 equals 1 times 15, which is 15. So 3 times 3t is 9t. 3 times minus 1 is minus 3. Then you can distribute the minus 5 in. It'd be minus 5t, and then minus 5 times minus 4 would be plus 20, equals 15. Now combine like terms, 9t minus 5t is 4t, minus 3 plus 20 is plus 17, equals 15. That tells you that 4t, if you subtract 17 from both sides, this would be equal to minus 2, and t would be minus 2/4, which would reduce to negative 1/2. Alright, I know how much every student on the planet loves word problems in math, so now we're going to do some word problems. Alright. Find a number such that 3/8 of the number, that should be 8ths, such that 3/8 of the number minus 1/2 of it is 14 less than 3/4 of the number. Alright, it says 3/8 of the number, meaning 3/8 times the number, minus a half of it, meaning 1/2 of the number, is, meaning it equals, 14 less than, so you're subtracting 14, minus 3/4 of the number. Now you need to figure out how to solve this. I would recommend getting all the fractions into a common denominator. The lowest common multiple of 2, 4, and 8 is 8. So for this one, if you multiply the top and the bottom by 4, you get 4/8x equals, and if you multiply this by 2/2, you get 6/8x minus 14. So 3/8 minus 4/8 is negative 1/8x equals 6/8 minus 14. So now, if we subtract 6/8x from both sides, you would have negative 1/8 minus 6/8x, which would be negative 7/8x, equals, those cancel out, so you have negative 14. Now, you need to cancel out the negative 7/8. You can do that by multiplying by the reciprocal. The negatives turn into positive because you have a negative times a negative. The 8's cancel out, the 7's cancel out, so you're left with x equals, we gotta multiply by negative 8/7 on the right hand side as well. The negatives cancel out, 7 goes into 14 twice, now you have 2 times 8, which is 16. Alright, here's an example. The width of a rectangular parking lot is 8 feet less than 3/5 of the length. Alright, and the perimeter is 400 feet. Determine the length and the width. Alright, we know the length is just some letter L we don't know about, but it says the width is 8 feet less than, meaning we're subtracting 8, then minus 3/5 of the length. And the perimeter is, I believe we said 400 feet. Now if you remember back in junior high, the formula for perimeter is twice the width plus twice the length. Which means, instead of plugging in the width, you can plug in the formula we have for the width, which would be 2 times 3/5 L minus 8 plus 2L. Remember, the perimeter is 400 feet. Alright, so let's go ahead and simplify this. Distribute the 2. So you have 2 times 3/5, which is 6/5 times the length, then 2 times minus 8, which is minus 16, plus 2L equals 400. Now, there are a couple of different ways you go about it. You could get this 2L into a fraction with 5 on the denominator, or if you want to get rid of that fraction, you can just multiply everything by 5. Since I don't like fractions, I know most of you don't, you could just do this. 5 times 6/5 would be 6L. Then minus 16 times 5 would be minus 80. Plus 2 times 5 would be 10L equals, then 5 times 400 which would be 2,000. Now if you combine like terms, you would have 6 plus 10, which would be 16L minus 80 equals 2,000. So now if you can move the minus 80 to the other side by adding, you would have 2,080 equals 16L. So if you divide by 16, you would find that the length is 130 feet. Now the width, remember, was 3/5 times the length minus 8. So 3/5 times 180 minus 8. That would give us 108 minus 8 if you multiply 3/5 times 180. So that tells you that the width would be 100 feet. Wait a minute, Mr. Cap's messed up. Because, remember, the perimeter is supposed to be 400, and if we do 2 times the length times 2 times the width, that would give us a perimeter of 460, which we know is wrong, so we messed up on one of these. Now 3/5 times 180 would be... Oh wait, I wrote down the wrong number. That's supposed to be 130. I don't know why I did that. So that should be 78 minus 8, which means the width is 70 feet. And that works. Because 2 times 130 is 260, 2 times 70 is 140, 260 plus 140 is 400.